Thank you so much for joining. So if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself, maybe your name or which part of Canada do you live?
So my name's Wendy Long, and I was born and raised in Montreal, and I've been living in Niagara Falls for the last 30 years.
Okay, great. So how did you get to know about the private sponsorship program like first time?
Well, kind of in a roundabout way. So I'm the founder and director of Afghan Canadian Interpreters. It's been around since 2017, and it was set up as a way of trying to figure out ways to get Afghans that had served with our Canadian Armed Forces to Canada, and whether there was any way to do so. So I kind of stumbled upon, while investigating different avenues to come to Canada, on private sponsorship. Now, although private sponsorship did not help Afghans that were still in Afghanistan, it did assist us in helping Afghans that were outside of Afghanistan that had their UNHCR designation. And actually, one of my first applications, and the way I got into the private sponsorship was actually a former interpreter for our Canadian Armed Forces, and he worked for an agency called Tundra, and that's was my first application. So that's how I came to understand the private sponsorship, and he was in Indonesia.
Yeah,
So
great. So what was like, for example, if you could explain what was your three main reasons for getting involved in this program?
I like the idea of private sponsorship. You have a team. You're not dependent on government funding, which can be a challenge, but also allows you to put your money where your mouth is, and to raise money. You're also raising awareness. And I liked the fact that you're building a relationship with this refugee, as opposed to just someone arriving to Canada as a government sponsored refugee without really knowing anybody when they get here.
Right.
You're building that relationship over the years, you're helping them and giving them tools and suggestions to help them succeed once they get here to Canada.
Right. What were your concerns when you first thought of, sponsoring the refugees?
I think a lot of my concerns were unfounded. I guess part of the concerns were, how long is this going to take? Um, you know, how are they going to, how are we going to find housing for them? I mean, back, for 3, 4 years ago, it wasn't as big a concern.
Mm.
Now it's a very big concern. Um, just how they would integrate, or I mean, part of our refugees and some of our sponsored refugees, some of them lived with me, some lived with other sponsors. How would they interact in the everyday life living with a Canadian? So those are, small concerns, but they were still concerns that we had. I mean, we didn't have to choose to have them live with us,
Yeah.
but I think we formed enough of a connection with some of these that they felt very, very comfortable living with us, and vice versa. I mean, I still have one of my sponsored refugees. I mean, it's after the year mark, and now he's, a tenant here with us, and
Yeah.
loves it, and we enjoy being able to interact with him in the evening, and have tea. Uh, so I mean, it's worked out really, really well, and
Hey.
our concerns were really unfounded, and they were very minor in the scheme of thing. But the biggest concern was how long it was going to take, because we have heard all sorts of things that it could take 4 to 5 years, and people's circumstances change, and sometimes the sponsor, one of the sponsors might not be around, or might move on or move out of the area, and then trying to find another sponsor. So I think timelines are a really, important factor on sponsorship, and trying to get those timelines less.
Right. Okay, so how did you build like your relationship with the refugee while they were waiting to come to Canada?
I think a big tool for many of actually all of my sponsored refugees was Facebook. Almost all, like actually all of the sponsored refugees were all on Facebook. So I got to interact and see when they would post things on Facebook and interact that way, but also through Facebook Messenger, able to communicate with them on a regular basis and how they're doing. And
Okay.
then eventually WhatsApp if they needed to, if we wanted to, chat that way. But mostly Facebook Messenger served.
Yeah, wonderful. So, describe me your feelings when the sponsored refugee arrived in Toronto and you got to see him or her in person for the first time.
It was like a journey was ending and a new journey was beginning. So the face on them and the look on their faces, obviously brings a lot of joy to us. Unfortunately, all of our refugees
Right.
arrived during COVID. So it was very, very difficult. I mean, you were not really supposed to be hugging. It was very difficult to even greet them at the airport or to be inside the airport. So that was a challenge, was because all of my arrivals happened during the peak periods kind of COVID, once they were just allowing people to immigrate and they opened up the immigration to Canada. So that was a challenge, and we didn't have those big kind of gatherings and welcoming committees. It was kind of like me kind of hiding behind a pole in in the airport trying to, it's like, okay, I'm not going to get caught in here. But yeah, it was just such a wonderful sense of accomplishment that this has finally arrived and they've gotten here. And then the excited for the journey to come.
Right. Okay. So, how has your interactions been with the newcomers since they arrived in Canada? Like, I mean, are you still in contact with them?
In contact with all of them. All of them are, doing amazingly well. They're all working. They've become, quite, one of them is a barber and has become very, very successful and well known. And he's actually, done the hair of actually some pretty famous people, which is
Mhm.
amazing. Um, others, are working in Niagara, and others are in Toronto and have gotten, a position with the college. And so we're very happy, and we share in those successes and those joys as they hit different milestones here in Canada. So, Canada Day, Christmas, birthdays, we are still very much in contact with our sponsored refugees. And this is, a year post 1 year. And as I said, I still have one that lives with us, and we just get along really, really well. That,
Right.
I'm an empty nester, so I had nobody here. So it's a wonderful companionship. So mutually.
Yeah, right. So, for example, if you go back, like in few years ago, would you still get involved in sponsoring them?
Oh, hands down, hands down. And I would recommend it to anybody who is even contemplating, doing sponsorship, that you're changing a life. It really is an amazing opportunity to take these wonderful people through no fault of their own, have found themselves in a circumstance in another country, and, are sitting on pause. Their lives are on pause until they get to a country where they can start a new life, and Canada's that new life. And what how many people have the opportunity to say, I had a hand in helping change someone's life, like
Hmm.
permanently. And I would definitely recommend it to anyone.
Right. So, what is something that you have learned from them? Like when you observe and see, what is something that sticks to your mind?
You know what? They are amazing cooks.
Okay.
I mean, they came to our house, and obviously, they want to share their culture with.
Hmm.
So I was just, in awe of, their abilities for independence in the kitchen, and wanting to cook bolani, and
Yeah,
have the wonderful teas, and biryani, and all of the different koftas, and it was just a wonderful. It's nice to be eating meals all together as well, and sharing in those experiences, and so that's been wonderful. But also, I think their resilience, what they've had to endure, and their outlook on life here in Canada, and how they see opportunity. I think sometimes Canadians lose sight of the opportunities that we have. And it's refreshing to see, life, although they acknowledge that there's challenges here in Canada, but that they, face them head on.
yeah, right. Okay, so from your perspective as a sponsor, what do you think refugees can bring to Canada and contribute to Canadian society?
Oh my goodness. Um, just their overall determination, their work ethic, their kindness. I think they really understand, what it is to feel oppressed or hopeless. And I think their positivity when they're coming to Canada, it can be infectious.
Mm.
So I think those are all, and they're just incredibly hardworking and determined individuals. And like I said, I think, as Canadians born and raised here, with the privileges, accorded to us, I think we lose track of what this country can be, and what some hard work and determination can accomplish.
Hey, thank you so much for joining with us. So before we close, would you like to share anything else?
Just I would really encourage anyone that is even ever thinking of sponsoring a refugee, to do so. You will not go wrong with sponsoring a refugee. You can form. They're not strangers by the time they're arriving in Canada. I mean, a lot of people, said, well, how can you just sponsor a stranger? I said, I think many of the profiles that I've seen, that your organization and Hazara Hopes and all of these organizations have portrayed, really give you a window to that individual. And in reading that person's story, you almost get to know them through their story. And then once you decide that, hey, I'd like to consider sponsoring, that relationship grows over the next couple of years, before they actually come to Canada. And I don't think you can really go wrong with sponsoring any of the refugees that have their profiles available. And I didn't. I'm just very, very thankful every day that they've come here. I'm just waiting for one left, so I've had a total of five, and one still to come to Canada. So, you know, every day I'm just absolutely thankful that they're here, part of our family, and that's what it is. They're part of our family now, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.